All right, bright ideas. Yes, we've got some bright ideas. Fred Gomberg here with Berkshire Hathaway Home Services, Fox and Roach. And we've got conversation with Carl Edmonds.
Yep,
From
New Vision Inspection
New Vision, and you're located where?
in Cranberry, New Jersey.
Cranberry, New Jersey. So you do home inspections.
That's correct.
Okay, and today we spent over 4 hours in a home that's about almost 4,000 square feet. We did a home inspection for a seller that's going to be putting their home on the market soon. And is there a difference between doing a home inspection for a seller versus a buyer, Carl?
Typically not. Pre-sale inspections are done with the same regulations, the same common practices that you do an inspection for a buyer. All right. So we're looking at the same components in the home. We're making the same types of comments on conditions of the home, and typically it's done exactly the same.
So why would a seller do a home inspection?
Well, the seller has an advantage if they do a pre-sale inspection because they know exactly what the buyer's inspector is going to report. So the advantage they have is that they can decide to make necessary corrections or modifications or alterations to the home to prevent those becoming an objection during the sales process.
So what kinds of things do you do in, whether it's a pre or a buyer, what kind of things do you do for a single family home inspection, or do you do anything different if it's a condo or a townhouse? But what are the things you check?
There's a little bit of a difference when you're doing a condominium, a townhouse versus a single family home or multifamily homes. You have to remember that condominiums, townhouses have what we call common property because there's typically a homeowners association involved, and in a condominium in particular, in the state of New Jersey, you really own from the walls in. You don't own the outer structure of the building or the roof. And in some cases, home inspectors will opt not to inspect those items. I personally do not do that. I inspect a condominium the same way I would inspect a home, a single family home or a townhome, only because the buyer should know the condition of the property that they're buying.
So what do you do for, again, we spent almost 4 hours here today. What kinds of things do you do in inspecting a home?
Well, the list is very long, all right?
Yes.
A typical home inspection of the property that we're currently in, close to a 4,000 square foot home, you have about 2,800 points of inspection. So that involves the structure, the appliances, internal components, electric, heating, air conditioning, plumbing, and all home inspectors in the state of New Jersey are governed by regulations. We have a standards of practice that we must follow on every inspection. That standards of practice is very, very specific. It tells us what we are to do by regulation and what we are not supposed to do. And I'll give you an example. A home inspector has to remove the cover of an electrical panel.
Right, I saw you do that down in the basement.
We can't just look at it and say it's okay and walk away. We have to open it up, we have to check breaker size, wire size, proper protocols, proper installation practices. An example of what we're not supposed to do, if we come upon an attic entrance, let's say for example the attic entrance is a hatch inside the master bedroom closet, which is very, very common. And if that hatch is smaller than 24 by 36, the home inspector is not obligated to enter that attic.
Okay.
That's based on state regulation because the safety of the home inspector is very important as well as the client, and the state doesn't want to be obligated to those types of issues.
What are some common things that you find doing a home inspection that homeowners can be proactive and address up front?
Water damage.
Water damage. Okay.
Number one enemy for a home is water intrusion, whether it's around windows, doors, overflowing gutters, seeping or wicking into the basement or crawl space, or roof leakage into the attic. Whenever a homeowner sees water intrusion, it should be fixed immediately. My number one thing that I write in every single report is water intrusion. We find it in almost every single home we inspect, and I believe it's because people just don't understand the damage that water can create to a home.
And are most of the things that many of the things that you find with water intrusion easily preventable if the homeowner had addressed some basic maintenance items?
Very, very, very easy to prevent. I'll give you an example. Water intrusion into a basement. Two major causes for water intrusion in basements: improper soil grading around the perimeter of the home, and improper maintenance and management of the downspouts or the drainage from the roof.
Your gutter systems.
The gutter systems, right. And typically what we find when we see water intrusion in the basement, we go outside and there's a gutter that terminates right on the corner of the house. There's no extension away from the house. Or we find grading pitching toward the foundation instead of away from the foundation.
Right, so can you explain what the grading means?
Yeah, the grading is very simple. It's the pitch of the soil around the perimeter of the home. Now, in many cases, when we inspect a home, we're looking at mulch or landscaping materials. But if that material is pitched toward the house and not away from the house, you're most likely going to have water intrusion in the basement or crawl space or whatever.
And over time, that can deteriorate not only wood, but can create rust and...
Yes. People are under the misconception that water intrusion in the concrete basement won't cause any damage. That's not true. All right. Over a long period of time, cinder block or cement block foundations are not meant to be wet. That's why we coat the outside of the foundation with tar to prevent it from being wet. So if you have water intrusion and you don't stop that, that will have a negative impact on the life expectancy of that building material. And in addition to that, when you have water intrusion on a chronic basis, you're likely going to have a mold problem.
Oh,
And
that's
that's another very sensitive topic in our society today.
all right, so you put together a pretty comprehensive report that you deliver to your client, whether it's the buyer or the seller,
That's
whoever
correct.
hires you. And what is a range? What do home inspections cost?
Well, they are priced according to the home. All right, a general ballpark idea or general ballpark pricing is in the $500 range. That would include a 3-bedroom, 2-bathroom, 2-story colonial, just around the 2,000 square foot mark. The minute you start progressing up from there into a larger home where you have 4 or 5 bedrooms, 3 or 4 bathrooms, 3-car garages, 3, 4, 5, 6,000 square feet, you're talking about a significant jump in pricing.
Okay. And do you also check for wood-eating insects and damage?
Yes, but however, that is not part of the standards of practice for a home inspection. That's a secondary service that the majority of home inspectors supply or provide. And it's the same thing with radon testing. That's not a mandatory test for a home inspection, but it's a secondary service that we offer because a typical inspection package in New Jersey is a general home inspection, wood-destroying insect inspection, and a radon test.
And are you finding that more sellers are doing this home inspection in advance than before?
I've done more cellar inspections this year than the previous 10 or 12 years combined.
All right, so it's good advice if you're thinking of putting your home on the market. Before you do that, have an inspection. And here's something that everyone is concerned about though. I do a home inspection and we have in New Jersey a document called a seller's disclosure. So I do the inspection and I learn some things. Can I just ignore those?
I'm not an attorney.
Okay.
But
He doesn't play one on TV. All right.
But I will say from my experience, no, you should not ignore them. All right? Because it is knowledge that you have, and the seller's disclosure, you're sharing the knowledge and the condition of your home with a potential buyer.
Right. But the main reason you're doing it is because you want to make sure that the home that you put on the market is in as best condition as it can be.
Yeah.
And if there's smaller things or items that you can address initially, it'll save when you go to put a contract together with a buyer.
That's correct.
Because it'll already be done, and the list that they may come up with is going to be considerably less.
Right.
Okay.
I think it's best to do the pre-sale inspections because you can address items and you don't have to go to the negotiating table multiple times. And that makes for a smoother transaction in my experience.
Okay, and again, touchy subjects, and we as realtors, and you obviously have seen a number of reports. In many instances, we'll see a report and it looks like somebody is kind of dancing around something. You'll indicate, or the report will indicate, possibility of potential of this, that, and the other. Recommend a certified electrician, a certified plumber, a certified structural engineer.
Right. Give
Further comments on this. Why is it written so carefully that way?
That's a good question.
Okay. We're here for good questions and straight answers. This is no
right.
no funny business.
And I'll answer as direct as I can. All right. When you have, if a home inspector cites, well, let me back up. Let me say it this way. If you go to your family doctor is what we call a general practitioner. Okay. I, as a home inspector, I'm just like your family doctor. I do not have an electrician's license. I do not have a plumber's license. I do not have an HVAC license. And I'm not allowed to do contractual work on a home that I inspect by law.
So there's no conflict of interest there.
No conflict of interest. However, I do hold a home inspector's license, a radon technician's license, and a wood destroying insect pesticide license.
Okay.
All right. So that being said, if I find a material defect in the home and I don't have direct expertise or experience on how to address that problem, I'm going to recommend the client seek additional advice. All right.
Okay.
That's for two reasons. Number one, I don't want to mislead the client, and I want the client to have the advantage of talking to a specific technician or a specifically licensed person, and I want them to have the ability to have a second opinion. That's what happens when I go to my family doctor, I'm complaining of chest pain. He sends me to a cardiologist because he's not the heart expert. So I'm sending the client to an electrician because I'm not the electrician expert.
But you can do an overview and say, this appears not to be to code and potentially dangerous. We recommend that you have an electrician address the changes. You can also look at something and say, yes, this appears to be set up the way it should be.
That's correct. That's correct. Because in the training that a home inspector goes through, these training courses for home inspectors are taught by, matter of fact, the electric section of the home inspector's license is taught by a licensed electrician. All right. So we have a broad knowledge, but we're not the expert. And we are not code officials either. So when you suspect something is not right, then we forward that onto the
Because
expert.
individual towns have their own specifications.
That's correct.
And you may not, you're doing one in Princeton versus Lawrenceville versus Hamilton versus Robbinsville versus Ewing, and you're going to give an overall statement. You can't say this specifically meets the code for XYZ town.
That's correct. That's correct. What you'll see home inspectors citing is that the specific condition we're referring to has not been installed per common acceptable building practices, period. So, and then the following statement's going to be, we recommend that you consult with a licensed electrician for further evaluation and appropriate repairs prior to closing, prior to occupancy, depending on what the issue is. If it's a safety issue, I always recommend prior to closing. If it's an issue that can be put on the back burner, so to speak, and fixed down the road 3 or 4 months, that's a different story.
Excellent. Well, we've taken a lot of your time. Again, you spent over 4 hours here doing a home inspection. Carl with New Vision Home Inspection.
That's correct.
In Cranberry, New Jersey. And if you have questions, you can reach out to Carl directly. I'm here to help as well. So make sure you do the right thing, have the right ideas, and get things set up before you list. And if you're a buyer, make sure you hire a reputable home inspector to walk through. Remember, the home inspector, is working for you. You're going to get the information you need to help you get from your home inspector. And it's as simple in some instances as you're going to show how to change a filter in your air conditioning systems.
We do a lot of training when we're doing a home inspection.
Excellent. All right, so don't be afraid to get a home inspection. If you need help, Carl, if I can help you, Fred Gomberg again with Berkshire Hathaway Home Services, Fox and Roach. Until we see you again with the next bright idea, we'll get back to you. Bye-bye.